Well, 8 European countries, including the United Kingdom, Denmark, France and Germany, say US President Donald Trump's tariff threats undermine transatlantic relations and risk a dangerous downward spiral. It's part of the US President's push to annex Greenland, which is currently an autonomous territory of Denmark. Many EU nations are vowing to stand firm against those threats and considering retaliatory action. Economics professor Richard Holden says Europe stands to lose more than the United States if both sides implement tariffs.
You know, it would hurt the US a little bit, but the US is the one country in the world that it can't be totally self-sufficient, but can be closer to it than any other country in the world. You know, Europe's not like that in terms of a whole lot of services, including cloud computing, certain goods in the sort of digital and personal consumer and business electronics area. They rely very heavily on the US. So a trade war or you know, almost a sort of halting of trade between the US and Europe, I think would hurt Europe quite a lot more than it would hurt the US.
So can you see the EU pulling this trigger?
I can see them kind of doing something. They might pull the trigger and then take some kind of measures. Right now, they seem to be wanting to de-escalate, and that seems very sensible and prudent to me. To be honest, a 10% tariff is not that big of a deal. It's not good. It's a bad idea. It does, you know, act as essentially a sales tax and hurts consumers, puts upward pressure on prices. But it's just not that big of a deal. It's on top of the 15% that's already in place from Trump's so-called Liberation Day tariffs. I think they'll try and de-escalate. I think the really interesting question is, what does President Trump do next? Does he, if he doesn't get what he wants, which it looks like he won't in the first instance, does he, you know, turn 10 into 25? We've seen him do things with China like, OK, I'm going to go for 100 or 125 or 150. Does he do something that essentially halts trade between the US and Europe? That would be a dramatic escalation.
So do you think Trump is overplaying his hand?
I mean, I think, as has widely been commented on, if he really wants to have an increased military presence in Greenland, there's existing treaties and there's existing statements from Denmark and Greenland that they're perfectly willing to do that. He seems to put a lot of weight on ownership per se, and he gave an interview to the New York Times about that, making it very clear that that's what he wanted. So I think with President Trump, it's very, very unpredictable, and I don't think a 10% tariff is going to get him what he wants, but he's shown willingness to do things much more dramatic than that. So I'm not sure that I'd say he's overplaying his hand. I think the concern is that he plays a much stronger hand and what damage that might do to NATO.
Professor Holden, this all comes with the World Economic Forum in Davos getting underway, with Trump set to attend there. What are you expecting from that, and what are you keeping your eye out for there?
I think it'll be interesting to see the sort of tone that he takes. President Trump seems to like to be unpredictable. You know, sometimes he can be quite conciliatory, at other times incredibly hostile. I think it'll be very interesting to see the sort of tone that he takes and how much he's in a sort of an aggressive mode of scolding people and how much he's trying to sort of cut deals. So I'd be looking out for, you know, do we see President Trump the deal maker, or do we see President Trump the bully at Davos?
Richard Holden, Professor of Economics at the University of New South Wales Business School. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Gemma.